The star freighter Wayward Sun was a sturdy, if not beautiful, ship. It sat in the main docking bay of Kaler Station, a place bustling with life from across the galaxy. Tall, insectoid thishians clicked and chattered as they moved crates. Hulking, fur-covered Gron lumbered through the wide corridors. The air smelled of ozone, metal, and strange spices. Inside the ship, Captain Li Jun filled the main cabin. He was a Brillian, a species known for its size and strength. His skin was a tough, gray hide like stone. Two thick horns curled back from his forehead. He was checking the supplies for their next job, a scowl on his wide face. His large hands carefully packed ration bars into a storage locker. A soft beep from the control panel announced an incoming message. It was from the guild. June tapped the screen, his scowl deepening as he read. The mission was a simple one. Go to the jungle planet Silax Prime and retrieve a sample of a rare plant called the Silaxian Heartbloom. The pay was good. The problem was the partner. The guild was assigning him a new specialist. His last partner, a big Gron named Borv, had been a good match. They could carry heavy gear and throw a punch. This new file listed the specialist as a human. A female human. June let out a low grunt of displeasure. He had met humans before. They were so small and soft. Their skin looked like it would tear if you brushed it against a sharp rock. He glanced at the warning next to her species designation. Planet of origin, Terra Sol 3. Hazard rating, 7. June chuckled, a rough, rumbling sound. Hazard level 7? That had to be a mistake. Or a joke. He had been to hazard level 5 worlds. They were terrifying places with acid storms and monsters that could swallow a man whole. A level 7 world would be a nightmare beyond imagining. It was impossible that these soft, tiny humans came from such a place. It was probably some human in the Galactic Council who had exaggerated to make their species sound tough. The airlock door hissed as it slid open. June turned, his arms crossed over his broad chest. And there she was. The human female, Park Soo-min, stood in the doorway. She was even smaller than he had imagined. The top of her head would barely reach the middle of his chest. She had dark hair, pulled back into a simple, neat braid. Her eyes were a deep brown, and they moved quickly, taking in the details of the ship and of him. She wore a simple gray flight suit, a small pack on her back. She offered a small, formal bow. Captain June? I am Park Soo-min. I will be your xenobotanical specialist for this mission. June didn't bow back. He let out another low, rumbling chuckle. He couldn't help it. She looked like a child next to him. A terraform, he said, using the common slang term for humans. It wasn't always meant kindly. They send me a sapling to hunt in a predator's forest. He gestured toward the data slate on the console, where the hazard level 7 warning was still displayed. Your people must have great stories. A level 7 world. Very impressive. Soo-min's expression did not change. Her face remained calm and neutral. The rating is accurate, Captain, she said. Her voice even and quiet. June waved a dismissive hand. He walked over to a large metal crate and easily lifted it with one hand, placing it on a high shelf. A bureaucratic exaggeration, I'm sure. Your file says you're a survival specialist. Fine. We have a simple job. We land on Silax Prime. You stay behind me. You do not touch anything. You do not wander off. When we find the Heartbloom, you point at it. I will collect it. Then we leave. Understood. Understood, Soo-min replied. She walked into the ship, her movements quiet and efficient. She placed her small pack neatly under a seat and strapped it in. June finished his pre-flight checks, his mind still on the problem of his new partner. She was so quiet, so still. It was unnerving. Brillians were loud. They expressed themselves with big gestures and loud voices. This human was like a little shadow. Soon, the Wayward Sun was moving, gliding out of the docking bay and into the blackness of space. The stars were sharp, bright points against the endless dark. So, June said, breaking the long silence. He wanted to fill the quiet. This hazard level 7 Earth. What is so dangerous about it? Big animals? Soo-min, who had been looking out the viewport, turned her head. The animals are one part of it. But it is more than that. Explain, June said, leaning back in his pilot's chair. He was ready to be amused. On Earth, she began, her tone matter-of-fact, as if she were listing data. Many of the plants are poisonous. Some can kill you just by touch. The water in many places must be cleaned before you can drink it, because of tiny creatures that can make you very sick. The weather itself can be a weapon. The air can become so hot it cooks you, or so cold it freezes your flesh in minutes. There are storms of wind and ice that can tear buildings apart. June listened, his initial amusement fading slightly. It sounded unpleasant, but not unlike other worlds. All worlds have dangers. Of course, Sumin agreed. But on Earth, these things are common. They are everywhere. And the animals, they are not just big. They are smart. They hunt in packs. They set traps. They use poison. A small insect, no bigger than my thumbnail, can carry a poison that causes immense pain. A quiet, colorful frog has enough toxin on its skin to kill 10 men. The predators do not always roar. Sometimes, they are completely silent. June thought about the jungles of Silax Prime. They were dangerous, yes, but the dangers were obvious. Big creatures that roared and charged. Thorns that were easy to see. This world she described sounded sneaky, deceitful. But your people have no natural armor, June argued, tapping his own tough hide. No clothes. You are not strong. How did you survive? Sumin looked at him, her dark eyes seeming to see right through him. Our brains, Captain, and our patience. We learned to watch, to listen, to learn the patterns. We learned which plants could heal and which could kill. We learned to turn the things that wanted to kill us into tools. We learned that the greatest advantage is not being the strongest, but being the smartest, and sometimes the most stubborn. June grunted. It sounded like a fancy way of saying humans were good at hiding. He wasn't convinced. Brains were good, but they were no match for a plasma blast or a set of sharp claws. After a few more hours, the blue and green swirl of Silax Prime filled the main viewport. June initiated the landing sequence. The ship rattled as it entered the atmosphere, finally settling with a soft thud in a small clearing. June stood up and grabbed his heavy plasma rifle from its rack. He checked the power cell with a practiced hand. He tossed a smaller, lighter stunner to Sumin. Here, just in case. She caught it neatly. Thank you. He walked to the airlock. Remember the plan. You stay behind me. Do what I say. This is a hazard level 4 world. It is not a place for curiosity. The outer door opened with a hiss, and a wave of hot, wet air washed into the ship. The jungle outside was a wall of vibrant purple and deep green. Strange, echoing calls and chittering sounds came from deep within it. June took a deep breath, hefted his rifle, and stepped onto the soft, damp soil. He was in his element. This was a place of direct action. He would lead, and the small human would follow. He looked back at Sumin, who was still standing in the doorway. She was not looking at him or at the jungle in general. Her eyes were focused on the ground near his feet. She was studying a patch of oddly colored moss. Come on, June said, a hint of his earlier impatience returning. The sooner we find this flower, the sooner we leave. Sumin finally stepped out, her boots making almost no sound on the ground. She fell in behind him, just as he had ordered. But as June turned to lead the way, hacking at a thick vine with the butt of his rifle, he missed the way her eyes continued to scan everything. The trees, the vines, the soil. She was not just following. She was reading the jungle like a book, and June had no idea he was walking with its most attentive reader. The humid air of Silax Prime felt like a warm, wet blanket. Captain Lee June took a deep breath, the pebbled skin of his chest expanding. He liked this. It was a raw, physical world. He could feel the danger here, and he knew how to deal with that. He glanced back at Park Sumin. The human woman was a few steps behind him, her small frame almost swallowed by the giant, purple-leaved ferns. Stay close, June said, his voice a low rumble. He held his plasma rifle ready. The predators here are fast. And hungry. I will, Sumin replied. Her voice was quiet, but clear. June led the way, using his size and strength to push through the dense undergrowth. He didn't go around things, he went through them. A tangle of vines blocked the path. He didn't look for another way. He simply grabbed them with one hand and ripped them apart, the fibers snapping with a sharp sound. A large, buzzing insect flew at his face. He didn't flinch. He swatted it out of the air with the back of his hand, crushing it against a tree trunk that he was showing her how it was done. How you survived in a tough place. You had to be tougher. Sumin followed silently. She did not rip the vines. When she came to them, she would carefully step over or duck under. She did not swat the insects. She would simply move her head a little, and they would miss her. Her eyes were never still. They looked up at the canopy, where strange, bird-like creatures with too many wings called to each other. They looked down at the ground, studying the soil and the plants. After a while, June stopped by a stream. The water was a strange, milky blue color. We should refill our canteens, he said, starting to reach for his. Wait, Sumin said. Her voice was soft, but it carried a note of command that made him pause. She pointed at the water. Look at the color. See the faint green glow near the rocks. June squinted. Now that she mentioned it, he could see a subtle, sickly green light coming from the algae on the stream bed. The water is full of neurotoxic microalgae, she explained. Our ship's filters can clean it, but drinking it straight from the stream would be very bad. It would attack your nervous system. You would be paralyzed within an hour. June pulled his hand back from the stream. He felt a flicker of annoyance. She was correcting him. I know that, he grumbled, though he had not known. Basic xenobotany. Any scout knows not to drink strange water. Sumin just nodded and moved on. They continued deeper into the jungle. The sounds grew louder. Deep, hooting calls echoed from the distance. Something large crashed through the trees far to their left, but June could not see what it was. He tightened his grip on his rifle. He decided to make conversation, to show he was not impressed. This place, Silax Prime, it is a true challenge, a hazard level 4 world. You have to be strong to survive here. You have to be ready to fight. He gestured with his rifle. Your Earth? This level 7. I still do not believe it. What could be more dangerous than this? He swept his arm to take in the whole, teeming jungle that Sumin was looking at. A beautiful, umbrella-shaped fungus growing on a fallen log. It was a soft, glowing orange. It is not about one thing being more dangerous than another, Captain. It is about the number of things. On Earth, danger comes from every direction, all the time, in many forms. It is constant. She pointed to the orange fungus. That is a firecap. Do not touch it. Its spores cause a burning sensation that lasts for days. There is no antidote. June scowled at the fungus. It looked harmless, pretty even. He did not like this. He did not like that the dangers here were so quiet and hidden. He preferred the loud, obvious ones. Suddenly, a high-pitched shriek came from above. A creature, about the size of a large dog, dropped from the canopy. It had 6 legs ending in sharp claws and a wide mouth full of needle teeth. It landed on the path in front of June, hissing. Finally, something he could fight. June didn't hesitate. He raised his plasma rifle and fired. A bright blue bolt of energy shot out and hit the creature square in the chest. It screeched, a horrible sound, and fell over, smoking. June stood over the dead creature, a feeling of satisfaction washing over him. He turned to Sumin, a confident smile on his face. See? That is how you handle a predator. Strength and firepower. Nothing can stand against it. Sumin had not even flinched at the attack. She was looking past him, her eyes narrowed. That was a screecher. They rarely hunt alone. As if on cue, a chorus of answering shrieks came from the trees around them. Dozens of glowing eyes appeared in the shadows of the purple leaves. June's smile vanished. He cursed under his breath and raised his rifle again. Get behind me, he yelled at Sumin. But she was already moving. She wasn't hiding behind him. She was backing towards a large, thick-barked tree, putting her back against it. "Do not let them surround you," she called out. "They will try to attack from all sides." The screechers attacked. They came in a wave, leaping from the trees. June fired his rifle again and again. Blue plasma bolts lit up the jungle. He hit one, then another, but there were too many. One landed on his back, its claws scraping against his tough hide. He roared in anger and reached back, grabbing the creature and throwing it against a rock. He was a whirlwind of motion, all strength and violence. He was winning, but it was a noisy, chaotic fight. He glanced over at Sumin. She was not fighting. She was standing perfectly still against the tree. Two screechers were circling her, hissing, but they were not attacking. They seemed confused. June saw why. Sumin was holding her small stunner, not aiming it, but holding it straight up. With her other hand, she was tapping the handle of the stunner against the hard tree bark. Top, 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 top. It was a steady, rhythmic sound. The screechers cocked their heads. They were predators used to prey that ran or fought. They did not understand this creature that stood still and made a calm, repetitive noise. It did not act like food. One of them lunged. In a movement almost too fast for June to see, Sumin sidestepped and brought the stunner down on the creature's head, not firing it, but using it as a club. There was a sharp crack. The screecher fell to the ground, stunned. The other one hesitated, then backed away with a nervous hiss. By then, June had taken down the last of the creatures near him. The jungle fell silent again, except for the heavy sound of his breathing. The bodies of the screechers lay scattered around them. June stood there, his chest heaving. He looked from the creatures he had blasted with his powerful rifle to the single screecher that Sumin had knocked out with one precise hit from a small tool. He walked over to her. You did not use the stunner," he said, his voice rough. "It was not necessary," she said calmly, checking her stunner for damage. "Their skulls are thin. The goal was to stop the attack, not to kill. A show of force can be more efficient than total destruction." June did not know what to say. His way had worked. He had killed many of them, but it had used a lot of his rifle's power. And it had been loud. Who knows what other predators that noise had attracted. Her way had been quiet, efficient, and used almost no energy. He grunted, a non-committal sound. He would not admit she had been smarter, but he could not deny the result. "Let's keep moving," he said, turning away from her. "The heart bloom should be in a clearing not far from here." This time, as he walked, he did not rip through the vines with the same force. He found himself glancing back at Sumin more often. She was still quiet. She was still small. But he was starting to see her differently. She was not a sapling. She was more like a sharp, well-made knife. Simple, but very, very effective. He was beginning to understand that the hazard level 7 rating might not be about the size of the monsters. It might be about the kind of mind that learned to live with them. The jungle grew thicker and quieter. The loud shrieks of the screechers were gone, replaced by a heavy silence that felt more threatening. Captain June moved more carefully now. He still led the way, but he no longer smashed through the undergrowth. He found himself looking at the plants, wondering which ones were poisonous. He glanced at a cluster of blue mushrooms, half expecting Sumin to warn him about them. She didn't. She just walked, her eyes always watching. After another hour, they reached the place. It was a small, sunlit clearing. In the center, growing from a patch of soft, black moss, was the most beautiful flower June had ever seen. It was the Salaxian heartbloom. Its petals were a deep, velvety red that seemed to glow from within. The air around it smelled sweet and clean. "Finally," June said, a real smile spreading across his face for the first time since they had landed. The pay for this flower was very good. It would make all this trouble worth it. He started to walk forward, his large hand reaching out to carefully pluck the flower. Sumin's voice cut through the quiet, sharp and clear. "Captain, stop." June froze, his fingers just inches from the red petals. He turned his head, annoyed. "What is it now?" "Don't move," she said, her voice low and urgent. She was not looking at him. She was looking at the ground near his feet. Look down. At your boots. June looked down. First he saw nothing. Just the black moss and a few fallen leaves. Then he saw them. Dozens of nearly invisible silken threads were stretched taut just above the ground. They were connected to thin, curved saplings that were bent back like bows. They were all around the heart bloom, a hidden web of tripwires. If you had taken another step, you would have triggered them, Sumin said, walking slowly to his side. She pointed to the saplings. See how they are bent? They are under tension. Those threads are connected to them. If you break one, the sapling will snap forward. It would be like being hit by a whip. It would break your leg. Or worse. June felt a cold trickle of fear run down his spine. He had been so focused on the beautiful flower, he had seen no danger at all. He carefully pulled his hand back and took a slow step backward, making sure not to touch any of the threads. What kind of animal sets a trap like this? He asked, his voice a whisper. I do not know its name, Sumin said, but I know its mind. It is an ambush predator. It uses the heart bloom as bait. The sweet smell attracts prey. The prey sees the flower and rushes forward, not looking at the ground. Then the trap is sprung. The predator waits nearby, listening for the sound. It does not need to be strong or fast. It just needs to be patient. June stared at the web of threads. It was so simple, so clever, and so cruel. He had been a heartbeat away from stepping right into it. His strength and his rifle would have been useless. His leg would have been shattered, and he would have been helpless, waiting for a creature he had never even seen. He looked at Sumin. She had saved him from a terrible fate, not with a weapon but with her eyes, with her knowledge. Thank you, he said. The words felt strange in his mouth. He was not used to thanking anyone, especially not a terraform. Sumin nodded, accepting his thanks. We can still get the flower. We just have to be careful. We need to go around and approach from that side. She pointed to a spot where the threads were fewer. I can disable the traps. June watched as she moved. She did not walk. She crept, her body low to the ground. She pulled a small, sharp knife from her belt. When she reached the first thread, she did not cut it. She gently loosened it from the trigger mechanism on the sapling, her movements slow and precise. She was like a surgeon. One wrong move, and the trap would fire as she worked. A deep, guttural roar echoed through the jungle. It was not like the shriek of the small predators. This was a heavy, powerful sound that made the leaves on the trees vibrate. It was the sound of something very big and very close. June spun around, raising his rifle. What was that? Sumin froze, her knife still holding a silken thread. The owner of the trap, she said quietly. It has heard us. The trees at the edge of the clearing shook. Then the creature stepped out. June's breath caught in his throat. It was a Salaxian ravager. It was massive, bigger than June himself. It walked on 6 powerful, chitin-covered legs. Its body was a nightmare of sharp angles and armored plates. Its head was mostly mouth, a wide, horizontal gash lined with rows of rotating, saw-like teeth. 2 large, black eyes stared at them with cold intelligence. Acidic saliva dripped from its jaws, sizzling as it hit the moss. The ravager saw June first. It saw the big, armed creature standing in its territory. It let out another earth-shaking roar and charged. June stood his ground. He was a brilliant warrior. He would not run. He fired his plasma rifle. The blue bolt hit the creature square in the chest. There was a flash of light and the smell of burnt chitin, but the ravager barely slowed. Its armor was too thick. June fired again and again, backing up. The shots were annoying the beast, but they were not stopping it. The ravager was almost on him. It swiped at him with one of its front legs. The claw was like a scythe. June tried to block it with his rifle, but the force was incredible. The rifle was torn from his hands and went flying into the undergrowth. The impact sent a shock of pain up his arms. Before he could recover, the ravager slammed into him. It was like being hit by a speeding ground car. June was thrown backward through the air. He crashed into the trunk of a large tree with a sickening crunch. The world went white with pain. He slid down to the ground, gasping for air. He couldn't move. He couldn't breathe. He was sure several of his ribs were broken. He was helpless. The Ravager loomed over him, its massive shadow falling across his body. It lowered its head, its dripping jaws opening wide. June could smell its foul, acidic breath. This was it. This was how he would die. On some jungle planet, killed by a monster. All because he had been too proud to listen. He looked over, expecting to see Sumin running away. She would be smart to run. She could not fight this thing. No one could. But she wasn't running. Park Sumin was standing between two trees. She had dropped her knife. In her hands, she now held two thick, heavy branches she had snapped from a fallen tree. She was not looking at June. She was staring straight at the Ravager. And then, she did the strangest thing June had ever seen. She did not scream. She did not charge. She slammed the two branches together. Crack! The sound was sharp and loud, like a gunshot. The Ravager, its jaws just inches from June's face, stopped. It lifted its head, its black eyes focusing on the small, noisy creature. Sumin slammed the branches together again. Crack-clack. Then she started a rhythm. Click-clack, click-clack-click. She was making a sound, a pattern. It was not a sound of fear. It was a sound of confidence. The Ravager seemed confused. It took a step away from June, turning its whole body towards Sumin. It let out a low, questioning growl. Sumin changed the rhythm. She tapped the branches faster, a staccato beat. Then she started to hiss. It was a low, ugly sound that came from deep in her throat. It was the sound of a snake, a predator. She took a slow step forward, not away, but toward the giant monster. She held the branches out to her sides, making herself look bigger. June could only watch, his mind unable to process what he was seeing. The mighty brilliant hunter was disarmed and broken, lying in the dirt. The tiny Earth girl was standing her ground, holding a galaxy-class nightmare at bay with nothing but sticks and scary noises. His earlier chuckle, his arrogance, his belief that her hazard level 7 world was a joke. It all died in his throat, replaced by a cold, stunning awe. He finally understood. He was not in the presence of a weakling. He was in the presence of a survivor from a world so terrifying that it forged a different kind of strength altogether. A strength that did not rely on size or firepower, but on a deep, unshakable understanding of fear itself. The world had shrunk to the small clearing. On one side was the massive, armored Ravager, confused and angry. On the other was Park Sumin, a small figure making herself big with sound and movement. And between them, lying broken against a tree, was Captain June. He could only watch, his breath coming in ragged, painful gasps. Sumin did not look at June. Her entire focus was on the predator. She continued her slow, deliberate steps forward. She was not running away. She was advancing. She changed the rhythm of the sticks again. Now it was a slower, heavier beat. Thump, thump, thump. It was a sound that vibrated in the chest, a sound of dominance. She mixed the stick sounds with that low, guttural hiss. It was a horrible noise. It did not sound like it could come from a human. It was the sound of something ancient and cold-blooded, something that was also a predator. The Ravager took a step back, his head tilted. Its instincts were at war. This small creature did not smell like a threat. It did not have claws or thick hide, but it was not acting like prey. Prey ran. Prey froze. Prey screamed. This creature was standing its ground. It was making the sounds of a challenger. It was behaving like something that was not afraid to fight. Sumin took another step. She was now closer to the Ravager than June was. She stopped the hissing and let out a sharp, barking shout. Ha! It was so sudden and loud that June flinched. The Ravager flinched too. It shook its head, its saw-like teeth grinding together in frustration. This was not right. This was not how hunting was supposed to work. The easy meal on the ground was now associated with this confusing, noisy, aggressive thing. For a long, tense moment, nothing happened. The only sounds were Sumin's controlled breathing and the drip of acid from the Ravager's jaws. The beast stared at her, and she stared back, her eyes locked on its main optic cluster. She was not blinking. Then, with a final, frustrated snap of its jaws in her direction, the Ravager turned. It did not run, but it moved away, its heavy legs carrying it back into the deep shadows of the jungle. The sound of its movement faded, and then it was gone. The silence that returned was profound. Sumin stood perfectly still for a count of 10, listening. She was making sure it was really gone. Then, and only then, did she drop the two branches. They fell to the moss with a soft thud. Her shoulders slumped, just for a second, and June saw her take a deep, shaky breath. She had not been as calm as she looked. She had been using every bit of her control. She turned and hurried to June's side, kneeling beside him. Her calm mask was gone, replaced by a look of professional concern. "Where are you hurt?" she asked, her voice all business. My chest," June managed to say, his voice a pained whisper. "The tree. When I hit it." Sumin gently felt his ribs. June winced. "I think at least 2 are broken," she said. "You are lucky they are not puncturing your lung." She reached into a small pouch on her belt and pulled out a medical injector. "This is a strong painkiller and anti-inflammatory. It is human-made, but it is cross-compatible with Brillian biology. It will help until we can get you to the ship's medbay." She pressed the injector against his neck. There was a soft hiss. Almost immediately, the sharp, stabbing pain in his chest faded to a dull, heavy ache. He could breathe more easily. "Thank you," he said again, the words feeling more natural this time. He looked at her, really looked at her. The neat braid was a little messy. There was a smudge of dirt on her cheek, but her eyes were clear and focused. How did you do that?" Sumin sat back on her heels. "It is what I told you before, Captain. On Earth, we did not start as the strongest. We started as prey. To survive, we had to learn to think like predators. We had to learn what they respect." She gestured toward the jungle where the Ravager had gone. "That creature, it understands strength. It understands claws and armor. But it also understands something else, risk. A predator will not fight if the fight might cause a serious injury. An injury in the wild means death. I did not show it I was stronger. I showed it that I was unpredictable, that I was not afraid, that fighting me would be difficult and strange, and not worth the energy for one meal. I made myself look like a high-risk, low-reward target." June listened, the lesson sinking in. It was a type of warfare he had never considered. It was not about winning a fight. It was about avoiding the fight altogether by changing the enemy's mind. "You used its own instincts against it," he said slowly. "Yes," Sumin said. "That is the true survival skill of humanity. Adaptation. Using what is available. Turning a weakness into a strength. Our lack of natural weapons meant we had to develop our minds. Our planet did not give us a safe place to hide, so we learned to become the thing that other things hide from." The hazard level 7 warning flashed in June's mind. He finally understood it. It wasn't a rating for the planet's monsters or its weather. It was a rating for the human mind. It was a warning that a species from that world would see a problem and find a solution that no one else could even imagine. They would look at a set of sticks and see a psychological weapon. They would look at a monster and see a list of behavioral patterns to exploit. Sumin stood up. "We still need the heart bloom. Can you stand?" With her help, June managed to get to his feet. He leaned against the tree, watching as she returned to the trap-laced clearing. This time, she moved with a quiet confidence. She knew the Ravager was gone, and she knew the traps. She quickly and safely disabled the last of the tripwires. Then, with a careful snip of her knife, she cut the Salaxian heartbloom and placed it in a special protective case from her pack. She walked back to him, holding the case. "The mission is complete." June looked at the flower, then at her. The mission was complete, but he felt like his entire understanding of the universe had been shattered and put back together. He had been so sure of his place in it. The big, strong warrior. Now he knew that real strength could come in a very small, quiet package. "Let's go home," he said. The walk back to the ship was slow because of June's injuries. Sumin led the way now. She chose a path that was easier for him to walk. She pointed out stable ground for him to step on. She was still protecting him, but in a different way. She was no longer the subordinate following orders. She was the guide leading him to safety. He did not feel insulted by this. He felt grateful. He watched the back of her head, the simple braids swinging as she walked. He thought of the stories he would tell back on Kaler Station. No one would believe him. They would laugh at the idea of a human female scaring off a ravager with sticks. But he would know it was true, and he would never, ever laugh at a human again. The chuckle that had died in the jungle would stay dead forever. It had been replaced by a deep and profound respect. The air inside the wayward sun was cool and clean. It was a relief after the wet, heavy heat of the jungle. The ship's systems hummed softly around them. Captain June sat stiffly in the co-pilot's chair, his large frame making the seat seem small. The medical pod had sealed his broken ribs and dulled the pain to a deep ache, but it would be days before he was fully healed. Park Sumin moved quietly through the cabin, securing the sample case with the heart bloom and stowing their gear. Her movements were, as always, efficient and silent. The silence between them was different now. It was not the uncomfortable quiet of before. It was a thoughtful silence, filled with everything that had happened. June watched her. He watched the way she checked the straps on the storage locker, making sure they were tight. He watched the calm focus on her face. This was the same person he had chuckled at just a day ago. Now he could not imagine chuckling at her ever again. The ship lifted off from Silax Prime, pushing through the atmosphere and into the quiet blackness of space. The planet, a swirling ball of green and purple, shrank in the viewport until it was just another star. June finally broke the silence. His voice was quieter than usual, less of a rumble, more of a gravelly whisper. "Park Sumin," he began. He paused, choosing his words carefully. "On the planet, I was wrong. I judged you by your size. I thought your world's rating was a story. I was a fool." Sumin finished what she was doing and turned to look at him. She did not smile, but her expression was not cold. It was accepting. "It is a common reaction, Captain. Most species see what is on the outside first." "But you tried to tell me," June said, remembering their conversation on the way to the planet. "You told me about the poisons and the weather. I did not listen." "Sometimes people need to see to understand," she replied. "You are not the first to need a demonstration." June grunted, a soft sound of agreement. He looked down at his own large, powerful hands. They had been useless against the Ravager. Her small, quick hands had saved them both. "That thing you did," he said, looking back at her. "With the sticks, the sounds. Where did you learn that?" "All humans learn the basics," she explained, leaning against a console. "It is part of our history, but my training was more advanced. I studied old ways of hunting and tracking. I learned how animals communicate fear and dominance. On a new world, a blaster can run out of power. But knowledge does not run out. It is the lightest tool you can carry, and often the sharpest." June nodded slowly. He was beginning to see the universe in a new way. He had always thought of it as a place of hard facts. Bigger was stronger. More firepower was better. Sumin showed him a layer of soft, subtle truths underneath. The truth of behavior. The truth of the mind. "The Galactic Council," June said, thinking aloud. "The hazard level 7 rating for Earth. It is not for the planet itself, is it? Not just for the animals or the plants." Sumin shook her head. "No. It is for what the planet creates. It is a warning about the kind of people who come from there. The rating tells others that humans are resilient, that we are adaptable, that we can look at a problem and find a solution that is not obvious. It is a warning that we come from a place that does not allow for weakness, so we have learned to turn every situation to our advantage." June thought about the hidden traps around the heartbloom. He thought about the Ravager, confused by simple noises. Sumin had not fought the jungle. She had talked to it, And it had listened. "I understand now," he said. And he truly did. A soft chime announced an incoming message from the guild. The payment for the successful retrieval of the Heartbloom had been transferred to his account. It was a large sum, more than enough for the trouble. June looked at the message, then at Sumin. "The mission is complete. The guild will have another assignment for us soon. If you wish to continue as partners." He said it as a question. He would understand if she wanted a different partner. One who had not underestimated her from the start. Sumin considered it for a moment. "You are a skilled pilot, Captain, and you are strong. You just needed to learn that strength has more than one shape." She gave a small, almost invisible smile. "Yes, I will continue as your partner." A feeling of relief, warm and solid, spread through June's chest. It was a better feeling than the painkiller. "Good," he said. Then he added, "And you should call me June. Just June." "Then you should call me Sumin," she replied. He nodded. Sumin. They sat in comfortable silence for a while, watching the stars streak by. June's mind was no longer on the past mission, but on the future ones. He imagined landing on other dangerous worlds. He imagined walking beside Sumin, not in front of her. He would watch her read the signs of the land. He would learn from her. He would have her back, not because she was weak, but because she was the most valuable part of their team. He was no longer the mighty Brillian protecting a tiny human. They were partners, a warrior of strength and a warrior of wit. Together, they were something new, something better. He looked over at her. She was studying a star chart, her brow slightly furrowed in concentration. She was just a woman from a small planet. But to June, she was also a representative of the most formidable, clever, and terrifyingly resilient species he had ever encountered. He was proud to have a child of a hazard level 7 world at his side. And he knew, without a doubt, that he would never make the mistake of judging anyone by their size ever again. The galaxy was a much more interesting and much more dangerous place than he had thought, and he was just starting to see it clearly.